Good evening, welcome to the 7 o'clock English news from the Salted Oman television. First, the headlines. Turkey calls on the United States and Iran to sit down at the negotiating table to de-escalate tensions in the region. 3 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli bombing that is targeting Maghazi camp in Gaza, and thousands of Palestinians are facing harsh humanitarian conditions in the sector. And Trump announces Russian president's agreement to halt attacks on Ukraine for a week, and European aid to Kyiv amounts near 145 million euros. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. The Sultan of Oman and the United Arab Emirates held a consular consultation meeting in Abu Dhabi. The meeting discussed existing consular cooperation between the two sides and reviewed ways to develop and strengthen it. It also addressed mechanisms for monitoring the implementation of joint initiatives in line with the aspirations of both countries to enhance consular services and deliver them with high efficiency and effectiveness. During the meeting, both sides emphasized the importance of continuing coordination, consultation, and the exchange of expertise. The meeting was chaired by His Excellency Sheikh Khalid bin Hashd Al Musalhi, Under Secretary of the Foreign Ministry for Administrative and Financial Affairs, representing the Omani side, and the UAE side by His Excellency Umar bin Ubaid Al Shamsi, Under Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said he had spoken with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and would continue to communicate with U.S. officials regarding Iran. At a joint press conference with his Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi in Istanbul, Fidan added that he hoped solutions could be reached to avoid any conflict and the isolation of Iran, calling on Washington to resist Israeli pressure to launch military strike against Iran. For his part, Abbas Araghchi affirmed that his country was ready to resume talks with the United States, but that negotiations must be fair and equitable. He added that Iran was also prepared to cooperate with countries in the region to promote stability and peace. Earlier, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan discussed bilateral relations and ways to de-escalate tensions between Tehran and Washington with his Iranian counterpart Masoud Pezeshkian. The Turkish Presidential Office stated that President Erdogan discussed with President Pezeshkian during a phone call Ankara's readiness to play a mediating role in reducing military tensions between Washington and Tehran and reaching solutions to the existing disputes. Hamas called on mediators of the Gaza ceasefire agreement to pressure Israel to open the Rafah crossing with Egypt, the only gateway for the Gaza Strip's residents to the outside world. In a related development, Hamas had previously issued directives to all governmental and administrative bodies in the Gaza Strip to prepare for handover all files of the National Committee for the Administration of the Strip. The movement added that the handover process would be monitored, emphasizing that it would be comprehensive, transparent, professional, and national. Hamas stated that handover would reflect flexibility in its internal administration, aiming to support the Palestinian people and eliminate any pretext that might be used to obstruct reconstruction and relief efforts in the Gaza Strip. Three Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike targeting the Maghazi refugee camp in the central Gaza Strip. The Palestinian News and Information Agency Wafa reported that an Israeli drone targeted a gathering of Palestinians in the Maghazi camp. Wafa also reported that Israeli gunboats pursued fishing boats and opened heavy machine gun fire on them off the coast of Gaza City. Additionally, Israeli forces launched airstrikes on the large areas of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. Months after the ceasefire took effect in Gaza, Palestinians in the besieged enclave continue to face severe humanitarian conditions with acute shortages of water, food, and basic services. Repeated rounds of fighting have caused widespread damage to water networks, wells, and small desalination plants, while Israeli restrictions continue to block the entry of spare parts needed for repairs. Despite ongoing aid efforts, daily life for residents has not improved significantly, with thousands of families relying almost entirely on the humanitarian assistance. The health sector is also under extreme pressure, facing shortages of medicines and medical supplies and damage to healthcare facilities, placing growing strain on medical teams. Amid this crisis, international calls continue to intensify, urging greater humanitarian support for Gaza, the protection of civilians, and unrestricted access for aid deliveries to ease suffering and prevent further deterioration. US President Donald Trump announced that his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin had agreed to a week-long halt to attacks on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities after Moscow's airstrike left buildings without heating amid freezing temperatures. Russian strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure have disrupted electricity, heating, and water supplies for millions of people in frigid conditions, pushing the war-torn country toward a humanitarian crisis. Trump indicated during cabinet meeting that significant progress had been made in the US-mediated talks between Kyiv and Moscow. The European Commission announced that the European Union intends to allocate 145 million euros in humanitarian aid to Ukraine. The Commission stated that the aid aims to provide protection, shelter, food, and access to water and healthcare. It added that 8 million euro has been allocated to host war refugees in Moldova. The Commission further explained that the European Union has provided more than 193 billion euro in assistance to Ukraine during the ongoing conflict.
Now, energy is the new front line.
China and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, have agreed to strengthen a dialogue to maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea. The Chinese television reported that all parties aim to properly address their differences. The Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs lodged a protest with the Chinese embassy in Manila regarding the escalating public rhetoric between the two sides. The Philippines accuses Beijing of carrying out aggressive actions with its exclusive economic zone and territorial waters.
Protracted internal conflicts.
Damascus and the Syrian Democratic Forces SDF announced a comprehensive agreement that includes a ceasefire in the commencement of a phased integration process for military security and administrative institutions and forces between the two sides. The agreement includes the withdrawal of military forces from contact points and the deployment of security forces affiliated with the Ministry of Interior to the Hasaka and Khamishli centers in the northeastern Syria, in addition to the formation of military division between brigades from the SDF. Bangladesh and Pakistan have resumed direct flights between the two countries after a 14-year hiatus. The inaugural flight departed from Hazrat Shah Jalal International Airport in Dhaka and landed at Jinnah International Airport in Karachi, marking a significant step towards strengthening bilateral relations and ties between the two nations. The route will operate twice weekly. This follows the resumption of direct maritime links between Karachi Port and Chennai Port in November 2024. Heavy snow blanketed the streets of Omori, a city in northern Japan. Residents cleared the snow, which reached a depth of 167 centimeters in some areas, a record for January since 1945. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued warnings of heavy snowfall in Omori Prefecture, continuing for potential damage and traffic disruptions. Gold fell more than 4% today, despite investors seeking safe haven assets amid ongoing geopolitical and economic tensions. Spot gold traded at around $5,183 an ounce, and its gains so far this month have exceeded 20%, marking its sixth consecutive monthly increase. The U.S. gold futures for February delivery fell 2.7% to around $5,176 an ounce. Globally, oil prices fell by more than 1% from their multi-month highs, but are still on track for the biggest gains in years as risk premiums rise due to global conditions that could disrupt supplies. Brent crude futures fell 91 cents to 69.80 cents a barrel, while U.S. crude lost 1.06 to $64.36 a barrel. More news coming up. Centuries-old tradition still alive. Bilad Sait Market in Bahla opens its doors every afternoon, keeping Omani heritage part of daily life. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. The Sultanate of Oman's economy recorded 2.3% year-on-year GDP growth in the first half of last year, according to the report issued by the Central Bank of Oman. The growth was driven by highest oil production alongside continued expansion in non-oil economic activities. More details in the following report.
The Sultanate of Oman's real GDP growth reached 1.6% in 2024 and accelerated to 2.3% year-on-year in the first half of 2025, driven by higher oil production and continued expansion in non-oil activities, according to the annual report of the Central Bank of Oman. Non-oil growth was led mainly by the services and industrial sectors, reflecting ongoing economic diversification and stronger private sector investment in the Sultanate of Oman. The report said fiscal consolidation supported by controlled spending, higher non-oil revenues, and proactive debt management helped strengthen macroeconomic stability, contain inflation, and support external balance, reducing overall economic vulnerabilities. It added that the banking sector remained resilient, backed by strong capital and liquidity and a solid regulatory framework, enabling continued credit to productive sectors. The fixed exchange rate regime and the rial's peg to the US dollar continued to underpin exchange rate stability, while near and medium-term economic prospects remain positive amid ongoing reforms and diversification efforts.
Bilad Sait in traditional market in the Wilaya of Bahla in Al-Dakhliya Governorate continues a centuries-old traditions, opening daily in the afternoon. Our reporter Saleh Rahbi takes us inside this historic market, where heritage remains part of a daily life.
سوقت ما شاء الله
والله
ما شاء الله عليك كيف سوق بلاد زيت
والله هذا السوق سوق تراثي من جد بعد جد.
This is a heritage market passed down from one generation to the next. It opens at 1 o'clock and continues until all the produce is sold. It is held every day after the noon prayer. We usually begin around 1:10. On Fridays, we start a little later after we finish the Friday prayer.
مر على كم؟ من كان ريال ريال
Drawn by its significance as a space where heritage and simplicity remain closely intertwined, the elder Jum'a bin Hamdan al-Hinai, along with other residents, continue to frequent the market held in the old neighborhood of Bilad Sait in the Wilaya of Bahla in the Ad-Dakhiliya Governorate. Fruits and vegetables from the nearby farms are laid out with care, turning the market into an open display of the agricultural life of the village.
والسوق مستمر الحمد لله
الحمد لله.
وكل أحد يجونا
الحمد
وإذا قلت لك إني ناس من أمريكا.
The market continues thanks to Allah. People come to us from America, from Saudi Arabia, from the United Arab Emirates, and from many other places. They also come from nearby wilayats such as Al-Hamra and Nizwa. Everyone knows that our market opens at 1 o'clock, and those who haven't yet done their shopping come here. People of all ages form a wide circle around the produce, while the market caller's voice rises and falls through the alleys, naming each item in the local dialect. His calls are answered by nods, gestures, and quiet bargaining.
ريال 600 7.
When the last item is sold, the market rests again, having completed another chapter in a story that continues to be lived, not remembered.
Here in Bilad Sait, time slows in the afternoon, allowing a centuries-old souk to revive community life. Reporting from the Wilaya of Bahla, this is Saleh Bukhalfan al-Rahbi, Ad-Dakhiliya Governorate.
You're watching the Sound of Oman television. Before tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Turkey calls on the United States and Iran to sit down at the negotiating table to de-escalate tensions in the region. 3 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli bombing that targeted a Maghazi camp in Gaza, and thousands of Palestinians are facing harsh humanitarian conditions in the Strip. And Trump announces Russian president's agreement to halt attacks on Ukraine for a week, and European aid to Kyiv amounts nearly 145 million euros. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all the crew here, myself, Suhail Al-Kindi. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Good night.